As a racial justice advocate, I'm often invited to give talks or to do workshops where I talk to white people about race. A big part of my practice is to offer real life stories, examples, that type of thing, that help white people to be able to identify white supremacy in everyday life. My husband's family is white, and I often use the cultural differences between my family and his family as a way to help white people see their whiteness. There's one example that I use that always gets a ton of pushback. My husband and I were late to our first Thanksgiving with his family. I say late because it started at 12. We got there at 12:10, but whenever we got there at 12:10, everybody was already sat down and eating. I didn't know that. I use this illustration to point out that different cultures have different understandings of time, lateness, and what it means to be polite. Without fail, a white person will push back and say that lateness is impolite. I always use this as a teachable moment. I usually ask a series of pointed questions that challenge their assumptions. Sometimes it takes a lot of work, but by the end, they're able to identify how white cultural dominance works in this one small area of life, which opens the door for them to start peeling the onion.
What's going on, everyone? It's Talks with Kenny here today, and we're going to be talking about racial justice and how it pushes negative associations, negative stereotypes. I'm not exactly knowing how I'm going to label this video, but I kind of want to push back a lot on what this lady had to say. So there's this weird thing that's been going on in our culture, and I believe it's rooted in racism, right? Ironically, that we're racializing behaviors with race, right? Like, for instance, me talking standard English, right? Me not sagging my pants. A black person, a non-political black person will say, oh, you're acting white. Now, the lady in the video, she's married to a white husband. So in my view, this kind of, it scrambles my brain a little bit, right? That she came late, right? And I'm going somewhere with this. Just bear with me. She came late. She knew that was offensive to her other half of her family, because how I see marriage is, once you marry somebody, that's your family, right? My wife's Hispanic, that's my family. Parle español, I have to learn, right? You come in, you go into their place of where the party's being held at. You come late. You know that's impolite to your white half of the family. But instead of saying, hey, I'm sorry, I should have been more considerate of your culture, because if I take her argument at face value, there's different cultures. People have different concepts about time. Wouldn't it be up to a good, respectable person to respect the cultures and customs of other people? So if you're going to a party, you know your white family likes people to be on time, so that way y'all can eat together and carry out things in a timely manner. You show up 10 minutes late. And instead of accepting responsibility for that behavior, you want to blame your race? You want to blame your culture? So you're kind of acknowledging that you don't have good home training, that you weren't brought up you wasn't brought up right. You wasn't raised right. If you know something's impolite to someone else, you don't do it, right? Common sense, right? I that missed me. Like, to me, and she thought she was saying something. I'm like, yo, what are you talking about? You just admitted you're an inconsiderate person. That's what you just admitted to me. Because if your white family decided, hey, why you haven't cut the chicken yet? Why y'all show up late to everything? You would have took it as disrespect to your culture. But what you're doing now is not. And then she want to pretend, oh yeah, white supremacy is in everything. And people who stick up for white people, it's a cope. It's a cope. And this is a common talking point a lot of these racial justice advocates push. And I made a tweet not earlier, but a long time ago. Wow, anything productive is somewhat related to white supremacy. This is trying to discourage people from doing things that will actually improve themselves and blame racism for why they can't read. This is another attempt to mix race with culture. What are you talking about here, Kenny? This is just in reading is white supremacy now. Everybody, it's a group of English teachers disparaging books. You can't make this ish up. Right, and this is the picture of the study, and what these literary English teachers are trying to say is that all these white books, all the information is white dominated. So is this country, right? So is history. You know, white people, a lot of people who made history just happen to be white, and that's how I see things, right? And there's this trend that was going on online, and now I'm gonna get into this next clip. That people are getting mad at the fact that black people show up late. And instead of black people saying, yeah, we show up late because, you know, maybe we lack good time management. Maybe we don't respect the job or person that we're showing up late to. I think that's the real reason, but you want to hide it under your race. And this is what I'm talking about. This is another example of people using their race as an alibi. Oh, I commit crimes because I'm black. How would that go in society? And this is what I'm talking about. I think black community, black culture, y'all need tough love, man. This is why I'm not tolerating none of this little talking points y'all trying to do. These assumptions that affirmative action is a good thing. You're admitting without admitting that you think black people lack the ability to do anything for themselves. And I heavily disagree with that. right? And we're going to go talk about equity because we're going to talk about discrimination in this video because racial justice is heavily focused on racial discrimination. And I want to highlight some examples to see if these racial justice advocates are actually consistent in their behavior. But before I go in, let's take a look at Kamala Harris talking about equity. Let's take a look.
Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place.
So as you can see, she's talking about, people don't start off at the same place, but we want them to end up in the same spot. And I disagree with that. I disagree. I believe everyone should have the ability to try out, but not everyone has the ability to make the team. And that's meritocracy, right? Here's an example. Discrimination on the basis of anything other than merit is wrong. I agree with that. This is what they mean by equity, and which is what we're trying to say. Corporate America pledged to hire more people of color. It actually did. The year after Black Lives Matter protests, S&P 500 100 added more than 300 jobs. 94% went to people of color. How is this representative? This is overrepresentative. Only 6% are white. If you were talking about equity, hey, we want everyone to end up at the same place, this should be equalized, right? But you don't do that. The NBA is 70% people of color, but y'all don't talk about, adding more equity to that. Oh, it's unfair that Asian peoples are not making it into the NBA. It's not fair that Hispanic people is not making it to the NBA. And this is the kind of thinking that a lot of this racial justice advocates kind of hide under the water. Because what they're effectively pushing is racial preferences. And this is the reality. I think this is why a lot of them hold so desperately to racism, because that justifies them feeling the need to get special treatment. And life isn't fair. Name me a time in history where everyone had the same outcomes. You can't, because we're all unique individuals. And if we're all unique individuals, wouldn't it be kind of expected that we all have different outcomes in life? If I decided to become an engineer and you decided to become a janitor, isn't it unrealistic to expect to have the same income as me just because me and you are black? And this is my kind of talking point against people who try to claim that, oh, Kenny, you're basing this off your own lived experience. Okay, so when someone says they experience racism based on their own lived experience, am I allowed to discredit that lived experience as not a non-factor? I always find it funny how black Democrats, black liberals, because they make up 94, almost the majority, they make up the majority of the political ideology of the black community. They're resting on their laurels here because they got no proof or evidence to back up their claim that based on their lived experience, America's a racist country. Based on their lived experience, white people are inherently racist. Isn't that a racist statement? That's like me saying black people are inherently criminals, right? Because if showing up late is not your fault, it's just how black culture is, then can I also blame black culture for why you guys disproportionately create more crimes, commit more crimes, disproportionately victimize your own people at a higher rate than other groups of people? Can I make an argument like that? Like one thing I have a problem with a lot of black liberals is you guys are not consistent. You guys are not consistent on principles. You guys have become the very thing that the civil rights movement marched against. If the people in media cannot decide whether they're in business of reporting news or manufacturing propaganda, and this is where I believe majority of black people are in right now. Because I already told you liberals, I have a problem with media because it's overwhelmingly ran by liberals. Liberals create they're part of the mainstream media. Most journalists are liberal. A conservative journalist is considered an endangered species in journalism. So you're getting biased information. How is this not propaganda, black people? School systems run overwhelmingly by Democrats and liberals. So they're teaching you your worldview. So in one argument, they'll say, reading is white supremacy because a lot of the books are written by white people. But in the same breath, when I point out how white liberals monopolize the education system, they're giving us real information. This is my problem with black Democrats, my problem with black people, because you guys passively are liberals because most of the information comes from liberals. See how I applied the argument equally? If you're saying what you said is true, you're getting biased information, you're getting preach white supremacy because most of the books are written by white people, then can I also make the same based on political lens? Hey, you're getting liberal supremacy because all the teachers are liberal. Teacher unions overwhelmingly vote Democrat. overwhelmingly co-sign Democratic policies, where I can show you an example how Democratic policies hurt black people. Black people do the worst at public school. If you put the same kid and you put him in a different environment, charter school, private school, he does a lot better than if he did in public school. No matter how much money, because the teacher unions keep crying about for more money, they get the more money and they end up going into administration, dictating what you get to learn. They rather spend money on transgenderism, teaching you about that, than actually teaching you about something of substance that can actually help and change the outcomes of your group. But instead of telling the people themselves, hey, you guys need to change your behavior so you can change your outcomes, no, they use racial justice for people to coddle them and enable them to continue their bad, negative, and ineffective behavior. Because at the end of the day, the results that the black community got is due to the actions and the behaviors that they incentivize in their culture. And here's an example of this, right? So I have two books here with me, Red, White, and Black, right? Because, it's Black History Month, right? And as a father, I'm homeschooling my kids. This is the kind of perspective on black history that I'm going to teach my kids. Let me know if you agree with me in the comment section. Here's a book. This is 1776. This is written by Robert Woodson, who was a former civil rights leader, activist. 1776 Unite is a movement to liberate tens of millions of Americans by helping them become agents of their own uplift and transformation. This is what I believe in. I believe black people have to be their own agents of upliftment and transformation. That means it's on you, personal responsibility, right? By embracing the true founding values of our country, America. 1776 represents a nonpartisan, intellectually diverse alliance of hundreds of thousands of writers, thinkers, activists focused on solutions to our country's greatest challenge in education, culture, and upward mobility. Now, one of the biggest factors in upward mobility, because I'm a hint at the racial wealth gap, is being married, right? Right? Look at this medium, the medium net worth of two-parent black households versus single-parent white households. They made more money. Two-parent black households make more money than white single-parent households. Oh, do you know that being raised in a two-parent household, you're less prone to poverty than being raised in a single-parent household? Oh, look at that. Which community has the majority of kids born to single motherhood? The black community. Which communities have the least kids born to single parent households? The Asian community. Who's richer? The Asians on average make more money than the black people on average. Behaviors, not your race. So if black people decided to get married more instead of chastising marriage as white culture, Asian culture, they'll have better outcomes. And this is what I'm talking about. I think it's a smokescreen deflection when people try to use their culture. In my view, they're trying to use their culture, their race as an alibi, as an excuse to absolve them from actually adjusting and changing their behaviors to have a better outcome. A man who believes he can't and a man who believes he can are both usually right. So if I believe racism can't stop me, I'm right. If you believe racism can stop you, you're right. Because what? Subjective. You create the incentive because you have the biggest impact over the outcomes you get in life. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And that's been my message on this channel. And I don't understand a lot of black people that get mad at me when I say, hey, affirmative action is more of a net negative than a net benefit for black America. They get mad. They say, oh, shaming affirmative action is not productive. It is, because we're having the conversation. You have an opportunity to bring information that helps validate your claims about affirmative action. And I haven't seen anything of substance yet. Right? So here's an example. It's all more important that the public understands the difference and choose their news sources accordingly. Interracial violent crime incidents in 2018. What the mainstream media focuses on, the white on black crime, as if black on white crime doesn't exist. Look at it. Over 500,000, right? Black on black crime too is a problem too, but what media focuses on, that's what y'all focus on. That's what black culture focus on. That's what racial advocates focus on, right? But they're the biggest perpetrator of it if you look at it from a more granular scale, right? And here's my argument. See, I'm principled. I'm actually consistent throughout. I don't believe black people attacking white people is necessarily racist. I just believe because they're in poverty, right, and white people are on the odds of probability will be richer than black people, they happen to be targeted for their wealth, not for their skin color. But if I flip it, right, let's say a white man who was born in poverty attacks a black man who happens to be a rich athlete, people will miscategorize that as a hate crime. When I could have made the argument, oh, he's trying to rob a rich guy. But you guys see color. This is what happens when you see color. You create misinformation. You create a misframing of events. My final point, and then I'll end off this video. Slavery is world history. White people did not invent it and were not the first to practice it, but we're the first to abolish it. No one talks about that. You don't talk about that. Racial advocates about whiteness, white culture. They were the first to abolish slavery. Everyone participated in slavery, but white people were the first one to say, I don't think this is a good thing to do. But, you want us to demonize white people. You want to push this narrative that white people are inherently racist, which is a racist idea, right? The last place in the world to still have legal slavery was Africa. It was not fully abolished on the continent until 1981. But y'all want to return to the motherland. There was a study in 1991 that the best place to be black is in America. So in my argument, if you're complaining about how you living in America today, you won't make it nowhere else. Because the richest 1% of all black people in the world live here in America. Even the poorest black has a better lifestyle than any kid in Africa, in any African country right now, on average. My favorite joke or my favorite thing to say when the Africans talk about America, they say, I want to go to America because even the poor people are fat. But you were sitting here, instead of being grateful for the opportunity, instead of being grateful that you happen to be in the best spot possible to maximize your potential, you want to complain about it because of some grievance that you didn't probably experience in the past. You want to talk about generational wealth when 77% of millionaires, or the majority of millionaires, generated their wealth in the first generation, aka they didn't get their money handed down to them. But you want to pretend that's how white people got ahead of you, and then you push for equity on a false narrative. This is my problem with a lot of, it seems like in a way, a lot of the racial minorities are worshiping racism. Because racism allows them to have this entitlement, allow them to believe that, I don't want to read because I don't want to. Reading is just not part of my culture. And this is why I'm saying this stuff is not productive. Racializing behavior is not productive because you're essentially creating a disincentive. You're pretty much teaching a group of people not to do things that will make them more successful, more economically prosperous, more academically competitive in the world, because you're disincentivizing, or you're labeling, or you're stigmatizing behaviors that will actually improve their situation. And then when someone who's embodying what he believes, I believe racism can't stop me. I believe my behavior decides my outcome more than my race. I'm embodying that right now. You want to say, and then you try to use that fact as, Kenny, you're an exception. Why am I an exception? That's the answer. That's the question I want to ask you. Is Talks with Kenny an exception? Talks with Kenny is an exception because he don't believe his race determines his outcomes. What proof does Kenny have for that? Look at the behaviors. Kenny's claim is, if I do the same behaviors as an Asian do, spend more time doing homework, study more in class on average than everyone else, right? Get tutoring, take school seriously, be motivated to do school, expose myself to different subjects, and use my time more towards academics than I do for sports, then Kenny expects to have similar outcomes to the Asian community. Okay, equity. You want the same results without doing the same behavior. That to me is impractical. That to me is a fantasy. You can't do that. You can't expect to be rich and then don't do what the rich people do to get the wealth. So what's the cop out? What's the cope that these racial justice advocates love to say? It's because of racism. It's because of systematic racism. It's because they expect us to act like white people. That's why we can't be successful in this country. Cap. Because who said that saving money is a white behavior? Who said growing up in a two-parent household is white behavior? Who said being smart, articulate, and clean is white culture? Who says that? Who says being logical and having linear thinking, believing in rational argument is white culture? Who put those ideas in your head? Not a white person. Because to me, that's systematic racism. Believing that behaviors that are the behaviors that produce the best outcome is associated with a skin color. That's racism to me. That's systematic racism to me. But it seems like it's being pushed by what? Black culture. And you think I'm lying? Anti-racism. All you gotta do is look at anti-racism. White culture. I did videos on it before. There's books out there saying that, thinking logically is white culture. Insanity. We racializing behavior, then we want to pretend. And then when something bad happens and someone used the very same assumptions that you use about the negative outcomes of your culture against crime and all this stuff, you want to call it racism, but you're using the very same framing and tactics to excuse yourself of responsibility. And I think that's what we have as a problem. In the black culture, too many of us are using race as an alibi to excuse our bad outcomes, our bad habits, our bad decision making. And I think that has a bigger impact on the black community than racism. Because in my view, based on these books that I read, racism never really stopped black people. Black people stopped black people. Correction. Black people let liberals convince them that they can't do something for themselves. And that's what started the decline of black community. Because we have black people graduating from college at a higher rate than black people of today. How is more black people graduating less than people in the past? How you can explain that to me? If affirmative action was a good thing, wouldn't more black students graduate than in the past? But the opposite is true. There was more black students graduating in college before affirmative action than after. What increased after affirmative action is black students' dropout rates, because they're getting set up in schools that they're not academically capable of actually keeping up with the work. But these same black liberals will come here and try to push this assumption that affirmative action is a good thing, that black people couldn't get anywhere without affirmative action. Where I'm here to tell you history has shown me otherwise. But I digress. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree with me, disagree with me? I'd like to hear all your information, all your topics, all your commentary in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.